The cottonwoods moaned as the dusk wind slid through them, carrying the chill of an evening that promised a hard frost by dawn. The ranch lay quiet except for the low rattle of a loose barn shutter and the restless shifting of the horses inside. The sky was already bruising purple, the last orange scrape of sunlight fading behind the distant ridge. She stood in that fading light, breath trembling, boots dusty from the long walk across the paddock. He was only a few feet away, halfway through tightening the last saddle strap. Frozen like a man turned to stone, he was staring at her as though she had struck him without lifting a hand. She felt the words she had just spoken throbbing through the air between them. Too heavy to drift away, too alive to disappear. She hadn't planned to say them. She hadn't even known the thought was waiting inside her, curled like a sleeping creature until it leaped out of her mouth with shocking clarity. 3 times a day, I will be your wife. The promise had come from somewhere deeper than reason, deeper than fear, deeper than all the bruises the world had given her, and all the scars he tried to hide. It felt like it had been growing inside her for months, pressing against her ribs, waiting for the moment he finally looked at her long enough that she could no longer pretend. She was made of anything except her truth. His fingers loosened on the leather strap. The buckle clinked softly, an eerie, trembling sound in the hollow barn. The horses reacted before he did, snorting, tossing their heads, sensing the sudden shift in the air. The crack of something invisible, but powerful. Dust motes hovered between them, suspended like they were listening to. He took a step away from the saddle, then another. She felt each one like a pulse, like a shock spreading through the boards beneath her boots. He stopped a few feet from her, the shadows of barn beams crossing his face like bars. His jaw tightened. A muscle flicked beneath his eye. He looked at her as though he were staring at a wildfire he couldn't stop, one he both feared and needed to walk into. She tried to breathe around the heartbeat stuck in her throat. He opened his mouth slowly, like the words themselves were dangerous. You don't understand what that means. She didn't flinch. She had expected denial. She had expected the hard set of his shoulders, the fierce instinct to push away anything good, anything warm, anything that demanded he believe he was worth something more than loneliness. She had seen all that in him long before tonight, every early morning when he worked without speaking. Every late evening when he thought she was asleep and lingered at the doorway like he was afraid she would vanish. If he closed his eyes, she understood far more than he believed. Her voice shook only a little. I do. He froze again, completely. Even his breath seemed to halt. Mid-dashed chest, the barn door creaked softly behind her as the wind picked up. A loose hay bale twine scraped across the floor, and for a moment the whole world felt as if it were holding its breath with him. He moved suddenly, too suddenly. A step closer, then another, the worn soles of his boots whispering against the dirt. She didn't move back. She couldn't. Her feet felt rooted, as though the earth had claimed her, refusing to let her step away from the man who had been a storm in her life from the first moment. She saw him, when he finally stood right in front of her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him cutting through the cold drifting into the barn. He still didn't touch her. His hands hovered at his sides, clenched, trembling with a restraint that startled her more than any outburst could have. His breath brushed her forehead when he spoke, low and cracked. You shouldn't offer yourself to a man like me. She held his gaze, refusing to blink. A man like you saved me. His eyes widened. Not with pride, but with something like sorrow. Like she'd misunderstood everything he had ever tried to hide. You don't know what I've done? You think I care? She whispered. He stepped back, as if the words physically struck him. The horses jerked in their stalls. One kicked the wood, a sharp, jarring thud. The rafters vibrated with the sudden movement, dust drifting down like ash. He raked a hand through his hair, turning his face slightly away from her, as though he couldn't stand the weight of her loyalty. You don't understand the things I've had to become, he said, his voice thick. You don't know what being mine costs. I know exactly what it costs, she whispered, and I'm still here. The truth of that, her standing there, trembling but unflinching, broke something in him. Something. Old, something wounded, something he had kept locked tight behind every wall. he'd built since the first time life taught him that love wasn't safe. He turned and slammed his palm against the nearest stall, post not in anger at her, but at himself. The sound cracked through the barn like lightning. She flinched, but didn't look away. He pressed his forehead against the beam, breathing hard, shoulders shaking in a way she had never seen from him. When he finally turned toward her again, there was no fury in his eyes, just fear. Pure, raw, unshielded fear. He stepped toward her again, but this time it wasn't steady. His hands lifted, but not to hold her. He grabbed her shoulders and pushed her back harder than he meant to. A flash of panic crossing his face at the exact moment she stumbled. Her boots skidded on loose straw, her back hitting the barn wall with a soft, muffled thud. She gasped more from shock than pain. He looked horrified instantly. I got no, but the moment had passed. The damage wasn't the push. It was the truth that shove revealed. He wasn't afraid of hurting her. He was afraid of needing her. So badly he might destroy everything trying not to. Her breath steadied. She stared at him from where she stood against the wall, her chest rising and falling, hair slipping loose around her face. She looked at him as though she could see through the crack he had tried so hard to seal shut. He took a half step back, palms open, voice breaking open. I can't do this. I can't let you give me something I don't deserve. You don't get to decide what I give, she whispered. He froze again. She pushed away from the wall slowly, deliberately stepping toward him. Her hand rose, but she didn't touch him. She held it just above his chest, close enough to feel the heat radiating from him, far enough to give him every chance to step away. He didn't move. Her voice was steady now. You've spent years believing you're too broken to want anything good, but you're the only man who ever looked at me like I was more than what I survived. The only man who ever heard me without me saying a word. He swallowed, the sound audible in the quiet barn. You think I don't understand what you fear, she murmured, but I do. You're afraid that if you take what I'm offering, you'll lose it, or ruin it, or watch it disappear one day the same way everything else you loved disappeared. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The truth flickered across his face like a shadow. Illuminated by Furlick H, she moved a breath closer. I'm not disappearing. His breathing hitched. His eyes closed as though his chest couldn't hold everything inside it anymore. When he opened them again, she saw something new, a break in the storm. A quiet surrender buried underneath all the scars. He lifted one trembling hand. For a moment she thought he was going to pull away again, but instead he reached for her hand, the one she held above his heart, and his fingers closed around hers. Not gently, not carefully, but truthfully. His voice was barely a whisper. I don't know how to be the man you think I am.
Oh.
She squeezed his hand. Then start by being the man standing in front of me. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't an embrace. It was something more terrifying for him than both. He let himself feel her hand in his, and for the first time in years, he let himself hope.